The flight home had been smooth, the kind of uneventful journey that lets you unwind after days of cutthroat negotiations and endless boardroom meetings. A surprise return was supposed to be a treat for my wife and daughter, an unexpected reunion before the holiday rush. I could already picture the look on their faces as they'd see me walking through the door earlier than expected. As I turned into the driveway, the familiar glow of our porch light greeted me. But what caught my attention first wasn't the warmth of home. It was the sleek black Mercedes parked snugly in my garage. I slowed to a halt, staring at the car, its polished perfection reflecting the faint moonlight. My stomach nodded. It didn't take me long to place it. I had seen that car a dozen times at company parties, its driver always smug, flashing veneers and shaking hands like he owned the world. Thomas Harrington, CEO of Vanguard Enterprises, my wife's boss. A sinking feeling turned my stomach to lead. My heart hammered in my chest as 1,000 explanations churned through my mind, each one more implausible than the last. It wasn't just his car, it was here, parked where my vehicle should have been. I killed the headlights and rolled the car forward in neutral, keeping my movements silent. By the time I stepped out, my jaw was clenched tight. I grabbed a small box from the corner of the garage, rummaging through its contents until my fingers closed around a handful of metal bolts. Without hesitation, I yanked open the hood of the Mercedes and tossed them deep into the engine's maze of parts. The tinkling sound of metal sliding into unforgiving places gave me a brief, vicious satisfaction. The thought of them upstairs together made my skin crawl. My house, my bed. I stepped into the house as quietly as a predator stalking its prey. The familiar scent of lavender air freshener mixed sickeningly with the faint nauseating waft of a man's cologne, Thomas's cologne. The safe was next to the study, hidden in plain sight behind a row of law books that no one ever touched. I entered the combination with steady fingers, bypassing the habitual clicks of the dial. Inside rested the Magnum 357, a gift from my father-in-law. My wife had always hated the gun, but tonight I reached for it with grim purpose. Every second sharpened my sense of betrayal into a knife's edge. Her laughter filtered faintly from the bedroom upstairs. It wasn't a laugh I recognized. Not the warm, comforting one she shared with me. It was something softer, sultrier. The bastard's laughter followed, low and deep like the rumble of a wolf. As I approached the stairs, my pulse roared in my ears, drowning out the sound of my own footsteps. I took the first step, gripping the gun tightly, but before I could climb further, a voice stopped me. "Dad, wait." My daughter, Emily, stood at the foot of the stairs. Her arms were crossed, but her expression was neither angry nor surprised. She stepped out of the shadows, the light catching her sharp, calculating eyes. "Don't dare expose them right now," she whispered, her tone cold and deliberate. "I have a better plan. One that will ruin his life." I stared at her, stunned into silence. Emily's words barely registered as I stood frozen, the weight of the Magnum still heavy in my grip. My blood thundered in my veins, demanding retribution, but there was something in her voice sharp and unwavering that pulled me back from the edge. She stepped closer, her eyes narrowed, her movements deliberate. "This isn't the way," she said, her voice low. "Not now. Not like this." "What do you mean, not like this?" I hissed, the anger bubbling over. "They're up there in our bed." "What do you expect me to do? Shake his hand?" Emily's lips tightened into a hard line. "I know it hurts," she began, her tone eerily calm for someone in the middle of this chaos, "but think for a second. If you go up there now, gun blazing, who loses the most?" Her words cut deeper than I expected. My chest heaved. The cold metal of the gun pressed against my palm. "It's not just about me," I growled. "It's about us. About this family." "No, Dad," she said. And for the first time, I saw a glint of something dark in her eyes. "It's about making him pay not just tonight, but for the rest of his life." She motioned toward the gun in my hand. "You kill him now, he's a martyr. A scandal for a week, a footnote in the news. Your life is ruined. Mom gets to play the grieving widow, and he's remembered as the tragic victim. Is that what you want?" I stared at her, the boiling rage inside me swirling with confusion. Emily leaned closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Let me handle this. Let me destroy him in ways he'll never recover from." For a moment, I couldn't speak. This wasn't the little girl I had raised. This was someone colder, someone with a plan. "And your mother?" I spat, my voice trembling with disgust. "What about her?" Emily's expression didn't waver. She made her choice. "You'll deal with her when the time is right." Her eyes flicked toward the ceiling, where faint laughter continued to seep through the cracks. "He'll regret ever stepping foot in this house." My grip on the gun faltered as I took a step back. Emily reached out and gently pried it from my hand. "Go downstairs," she ordered. "Wait for my signal." I wanted to argue, to scream, to march up those stairs and put an end to the farce, but something about Emily's unwavering demeanor held me in place. Reluctantly, I backed away and retreated to the living room. I sat on the couch, fists clenched, the sound of muffled voices and laughter above fueling my rage. Minutes ticked by, each one stretching into an eternity. I could barely hear the soft creak of the stairs as Emily ascended. Her footsteps were careful and deliberate. Then suddenly, the laughter stopped. There was a loud thud followed by a sharp cry of surprise. I bolted upright, instincts flaring, but before I could rush to the scene, I heard her voice calm, authoritative. "Get out," Emily barked, her tone cutting through the silence like a whip. For a moment, there was no response. Then I heard Thomas's voice, shaky and confused. "What the hell is going on?" "I said get out," Emily snapped. "Unless you want me to call the police and tell them exactly what you've been doing here." "Emily," my wife's voice started, but it was immediately silenced by my daughter's sharp interruption. "Don't talk." I crept to the foot of the stairs, careful not to make a sound. From my vantage point, I could see Emily standing in the doorway to the bedroom. Her arms were crossed, her posture commanding. Thomas stood a few feet away, his shirt unbuttoned, his face pale. "You're going to leave," Emily said, her voice cold and steady. "And you're going to stay out of our lives. If I see you near this house again, I'll destroy you." Thomas sneered, trying to regain his composure. "You think you can scare me, kid? You have no idea who you're dealing with." Emily's lips curled into a sinister smile. "Oh, I know exactly who I'm dealing with. That's why I already sent the pictures." His confidence wavered. "What pictures?" "The ones of you and my married mother," she spat. "You didn't notice the camera I set up in the corner of the bedroom, did you?" "Rookie mistake." She glanced at her phone, which was already lighting up. "They're already on their way to your wife's inbox, your board of directors, and every tabloid in the city." Thomas froze, his face twisting into a mask of horror. My wife let out a choked gasp. "Emily, what have you done?" she whispered. "What you were too stupid to avoid?" Emily snapped. "Now, both of you, get the hell out of here." I watched, hidden in the shadows, as Thomas stormed past her, muttering curses under his breath. My wife followed, her face pale and tear-streaked. Emily stood in the doorway, unmoving, until the sound of their footsteps faded into silence. When she finally turned to me, her expression was unreadable. "Your turn," she said simply, before walking past me. The weight of the night settled over us both like a suffocating shroud. I stood in the living room, my body frozen, my mind still reeling from everything that had just transpired. Emily had done it. She had controlled the situation, handled Thomas and my wife, and now I was left alone with the wreckage. I should have felt relief, maybe even a sense of gratitude, but I didn't. Instead, there was a hollow ache in my chest, a gnawing emptiness that I couldn't shake. My family had been torn apart, not by some external force, but by my own flesh and blood, my daughter, the one I had raised, the one who had always been my pride and joy. When I looked at her now, I didn't recognize her. She wasn't the girl I'd spent countless nights tucking into bed or cheering on at school performances. No, this was someone darker, someone who had carefully orchestrated a plan of destruction without so much as a second thought. Emily had transformed from a young girl I could protect to a woman who had no qualms about throwing her own father into the chaos for her own gains. I couldn't escape the weight of her actions, nor could I escape the gut-wrenching realization that I had allowed it to happen. It wasn't just Thomas and my wife who were ruined, it was me too. My marriage, my family, my home, all of it had been shattered in the span of a few hours. The night stretched on in a blur of confusion and anger. The door slammed behind Emily, and I was left to process the aftermath in silence. The house was too quiet now, the kind of silence that suffocates rather than comforts. It felt as if the walls were closing in on me, pressing in, reminding me of everything I had lost. I moved through the house like a ghost, stumbling over the remains of my former life. The kitchen, once a place of warmth and togetherness, now felt foreign, cold. The hallway was empty, devoid of the footsteps I had once cherished. Even the living room, where Emily and I had spent countless evenings watching TV and laughing together, felt like a hollow shell. I couldn't shake the thought of my wife, her face, when she had seen the pictures, the shock and fear in her eyes. She had betrayed me, but there was something more insidious behind it. She had chosen him, Thomas Harrington, over everything we had built together. And for what? Power, control, status? She had thrown away our marriage, our family, all for the thrill of an affair with a man who had no loyalty, no regard for her or for me. As the night wore on, I found myself sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the TV screen. The flickering images on the screen didn't register. I wasn't even aware of the noise around me. My thoughts swirled in a violent vortex, and I couldn't escape. My mind kept returning to the gun, my father-in-law's gift. The Magnum 357. It sat on the coffee table, its cold metal reflecting the faint light from the lamp. I hadn't used it, but I felt its weight pressing against me like a constant reminder of what I was capable of. Emily had controlled the situation upstairs, but now I had to find a way to deal with my wife and Thomas. They were gone for the night, but I couldn't leave things as they were. I couldn't just let them walk away from this mess unscathed. They had ruined everything, and I needed to make sure they paid for it. I had been too passive for too long, letting my wife walk all over me, letting her make decisions that I should have challenged. Emily had stepped in, but now it was time for me to finish what she had started. There was a sickening satisfaction in the thought of what was coming. Thomas would pay for what he had done to my family, and so would my wife. The idea consumed me, taking over every thought, every feeling. Revenge, it was all I could think about. They needed to feel the same pain I was feeling. They needed to understand the weight of their actions. This wasn't about justice, it was about retribution. I got up from the couch, the gun still in my hand. I had no plan, no clear direction, but I knew what I had to do. Thomas and my wife had made their choices. Now, it was time to make mine. I grabbed my phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in years. It was a name from my past, someone who knew how to get things done, no questions asked. The phone rang a few times before a deep voice answered. "Yeah? It's me," I said, my voice cold and low. There was a pause. "What do you need?" "I need you to take care of something," I said. "A man named Thomas Harrington." I could hear the interest in his voice. "What's the job?" "Make sure he loses everything," I replied. "His company, his reputation, his freedom. Make him pay for what he's done." I could hear a slight chuckle on the other end of the line. "You got it. You want this to be clean, or should we make it messy?" "Messy," I said, my voice tight with anger. "I want him destroyed." "Consider it done," the voice said before hanging up. I stared at the phone in my hand, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and dread. I had taken the first step toward making them pay. But was it enough? Could I really live with myself after this? I didn't have the answers. All I knew was that it had to be done. There was no turning back now. The following days were a blur of frantic preparations. Emily remained calm, almost eerily so. She went about her life as if nothing had changed, focusing on her studies and keeping a low profile. But I knew better. She had orchestrated everything, pulling strings from behind the scenes, and now she was waiting for the fallout. As for me, I couldn't escape the weight of what I was doing. My mind was consumed with thoughts of vengeance, and yet I couldn't help but feel the sting of what I'd lost. My marriage, my family, it was all slipping through my fingers. The more I focused on revenge, the more I realized that I wasn't just hurting Thomas or my wife, I was hurting myself too. The night finally arrived. The time for action had come. I couldn't ignore it any longer. The plan was in motion, and I had to see it through. Emily and I sat in the living room, the silence between us heavy. She didn't need to say anything. She knew what I was planning. She'd been waiting for this moment, just as I had. But this wasn't her fight anymore. It was mine. I stood up and grabbed the gun from the table, the weight of it familiar in my hand. Emily didn't flinch. She had already made her peace with what was happening. "I'll take care of the aftermath," she said quietly, her eyes cold and calculating. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. The rage inside me was a fire, consuming everything in its path. But even as I prepared to take the final step, I couldn't escape the feeling that something had already been lost. Something irreparable. I left the house without a word to Emily, the weight of my decision settling over me like a dark cloud. The world outside felt distant, surreal, like I was walking in a dream. Every step felt heavy, but there was no turning back now. Thomas and my wife would pay for what they had done. I drove through the streets, the city lights blurring by as I made my way to Vanguard Enterprises. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat a reminder of the life I'd once known, the life that was now beyond reach. I arrived at the building, its towering presence mocking me. I parked the car, and for a moment, I just sat there, staring at the building, waiting for the right moment to make my move. Thomas would never see it coming. But just as I was about to get out, my phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a message from Emily. "You don't have to do this. It's not worth it." I hesitated. The phone slipped from my hand and fell onto the seat. Was she right? Had I gone too far? Before I could answer, the sound of sirens filled the night air, and my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a message from Emily. It was from an unknown number. "You're making a mistake." The words sent a chill down my spine. The game was only beginning.